we go. Well, I'm very thrilled today to be speaking to a very big creative author, playwright, Nathan Luff. Welcome. How are
Thank you.
you?
Thanks. I am busy, tired.
I know. You're a very busy man. Um, look, you're heading, the Sydney Writers Festival, and you're the manager of the children and young adults program. Now, that in itself, I would say, is a minefield to do.
Yeah. I mean, I love it, and the thing about Sydney Writers Festival is there is so much within the program for kids and YA, and you find if you look at a lot of the festivals, especially around Australia, sometimes that program is what's getting cut, and there's not that much being offered. And I think it's so important more than ever to be, encouraging reading and to be developing our young readers so that we have readers in the future. So I think Sydney Writers Festival is one of the best things about working there is how much um, they focus on young readers.
On young readers. Well, look, let's start with, as the manager, what was your vision? What is your vision for the engaging young readers? And how do you go about curating, for
Mm.
them? And what's the balance between the established voices and the emerging
Yeah,
authors?
yeah, there is so many challenges actually because it's the emerging established, but there's also if you talk about kids publishing, there's early childhood through to early primary to upper primary. Like there's some very distinct stages within that. There are
Yeah,
reluctant readers, there are voracious readers. Like how do you program for all of the people? And the answer is you can't do everything. So for me, one of the biggest things that I focus on is the joy of reading. Because I think in primary school especially, the curriculum is so crowded. I used to be a teacher, and so I know how crowded that curriculum is to put anything in. And the thing that we drop all the time is just reading for pleasure, which is the thing that I love the most. So I
yes.
try to create programs where kids come along and they have a really great time because it's also about the association. If you go and, people are being silly, it's fun, parents having a good time as well, seeing you engage with literature, it just brings this great association of reading is fun. It doesn't have to be this chore, this thing that you have to do assessments on afterwards. It can just be something that takes you away and you
Takes you
enjoy.
away. Well, as back in the days before all this, our internet and all that, we were right into it being told stories, going to bed,
Mm,
weren't we? And the books
yeah.
were our main, communication with the fantasy world, the true stories
That's
or
right.
whatever, wasn't it? And
And teachers tell me all the time that they don't have time to even just sit and read books to kids anymore. Like that gets always thrown
that's
out as
sad.
well. Kids love to sit and hear
They
stories.
do. They do. I've got a grandson that's nearly two, and he is always delighted to, have a book in front of him. At the moment, it's the pictures, it's anything with a car is just thrilling for him. But also the animal kingdom. And obviously just animation of something that comes into their world. But yeah,
Mm,
that's how these young kids start to appreciate
mm.
the reading,
That's
you
right.
feel?
And I think kids authors are an interesting breed because
Yeah,
we're expected to go into schools and essentially act as entertainers, I think with adult authors, often if you get booked for festivals, often you'll be on a panel, you'll have someone who's preparing that whole session. You just kind of have to show up and answer questions. We dream of that happening. For us,
yeah,
it's you show up, you're given the stage, for sometimes up to an hour, you're just there entertaining, hundreds and hundreds of kids. And as a result, so many kids authors are just wonderful storytellers. They've practiced doing that. Kids are the most brutal audience. Like if they're not engaged, they're not engaged.
engaged.
So that's also when I'm programming. I'm looking for those presenters who are just comfortable in front of kids and can just hold them. And you can see the joy of the kids just,
Oh,
leaning forward, like hanging on every word.
yeah. Oh, I love it. Well, what would you say is one of the highlights of the festival?
Well, look, I think it's all going to be amazing. I
Yeah.
think if anyone hasn't seen Andrew McDonald and Ben Wood, who are the
Sorry.
creators of the Real Pigeon series, if they haven't seen them in action, it's super fun. There's usually, quite large props and costumes. They've got the crowd going wild. Sometimes there's live mysteries. You never really know what you're going to get with them, which is part of the joy.
Yeah.
And the kids usually get into it as well. And any kid who shows up for that one in costume, in pigeon costume, gets a prize as well. So
Oh,
that one could
good.
be
Oh, that's
quite
good.
wild.
Yeah.
And it's really good when you get that sort of pitch books that are, we call them sort of junior fiction type books that have, a certain level of illustration, which makes them quite popular for a wide audience group as well. So younger kids, can marvel at the pictures, but older kids can really delve into the story. So likewise, Amelia Mellor, who has a new series called Ocean Forged. So she came to popularity during COVID when she wrote The Grandest Bookshop in the World, which was just this huge bestseller at a time where books weren't finding audiences because everyone was in lockdown. This book just sort of emerged and it was fabulous.
Wow.
It was so great. So this is her new series, and she'll be there with some sea shanties and some puzzles and things. So that'll be heaps of fun as well.
Yeah.
And then for the
Yeah.
younger kids, we have a bunch of story time sessions. So that's usually where picture book creators share their books, but also there's usually sing-alongs and all sorts of things with that. So we've got fabulous people like Josh Pike, Stephen Michael King, Jazz Money, Jason Fu, and Nagi Mahashi with her dog Dozer. I will be
Yeah.
there as well. So that should be heaps of fun.
Oh my God. Tell me, what was the very first book you fell in love with? And
Uh,
and what was the influence from that
mm,
and
yeah,
and
yeah.
and now and continuing now?
I actually remember going to my first. So I grew up in a country town, and we were quite isolated in many ways. But we did have a book fair come through when I was quite young, and I
Oh,
remember
nice.
someone recommending this book by an unknown author called Paul Jennings, and I thought, oh, I'll give him a try. So short stories by him, and I was hooked. It was amazing, and
Yeah.
since read basically everything that he wrote. I actually think that Australian authors are amazing and have been for many, many years. So people like Robin Klein, Gillian Rubinstein, I was Victor
Mm.
Kelleher, Colin Teal, all of these authors I just loved. They were so great.
Oh, beautiful. Beautiful. So would that be a recommendation for young parents to, for books like that? Or what
Well,
would you
maybe,
recommend?
but I also think it's important for parents to see what's out there now. Books have changed a lot. So sometimes, and I have a 12-year-old son, and sometimes we will go back to some of these classics because you have this
Yeah,
nostalgia for
yeah,
them. But
yeah.
when you read them, the pacing is very different. Themes are very different. So sometimes it's not exactly as you remember it.
Mm,
And I think the pacing is a big thing. If you've got reluctant readers, going back to some of those books, they don't quite work the way that some of our books do today. And we do have a greater variety of books, I think, now than we did certainly when I was young. And like I mentioned, the junior fiction is this space that has exploded. And
mm.
it's great for kids who are moving on from picture books, but are not yet ready for what we call middle grade, which are, essentially novels for kids, no pictures. And so there's all this amazing stuff in the in-between land where there are some images, it's kind of almost, just guiding them through that process so they can become independent readers.
And what about diversity of books? You know,
Yeah, well, that's the other thing that, especially in Australia, has really started to hit in that, and diversity comes in so many, shapes
yeah,
and forms.
yeah,
And so we have books now that, certainly we've got cultural diversity, lots of different offerings of different, lived experience,
yeah.
from people who have lived those experiences. We've got books that deal with different sort of neurodivergence as well. So I think because the whole thing is kids wanting to see themselves in the books that they read. And that's what we're seeing now. There's such a diversity of that. And then the trick, of course, is how those books find the readers. And that's where we need to make sure we've got some great teacher librarians and people like that out there who are really aware of what's being published to be able to connect to those kids.
Wow, that's amazing. You as an author, my God, how do you balance your life? With because you've obviously got a book out. Is it the Jungle Book?
Yeah, so that one came out earlier this year. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's look, to be honest, the hardest thing is that the writing is often the thing that gets dropped. Um, in terms of all these other deadlines that you've got that you can't miss, must say that that's where getting publishing contracts in place, because deadlines are the best thing, obviously, for a writer to make sure that things happen. So I'm trying to get at least something out each year. But yeah, that's the biggest challenge. And often it's like when you're at uni and you've got an assignment due and you're in that, we
Yes,
had a 24-hour computer lab. We were all there the night before trying to get
yes,
it done. I feel
yes,
like sometimes it's like that, trying to get the books done in time.
yeah.
Um, the best thing, of course, is working with a really good editor, though, who understands you and is able to give you that feedback to sort of speed up that process a
And
little
an
bit.
and your illustrator?
Yeah, yeah, I have it, and I've been working with a couple of new ones lately, but a lot
Yeah.
of my books were with one illustrator named Chris Kennett, who's amazing. And so I think because it's that thing, a lot of people aren't necessarily aware that illustrators and authors often don't collaborate together. It's all done through a publishing house and through an editor.
Right.
So in some ways, it's kind of like an arranged marriage that they pick someone they think will match you, and you've
Mm,
never met them. So when we first did our first book, I'd never heard of Chris, but we were so beautifully matched in terms of our sense of humor, even our personalities. I think we work really well together.
yeah.
So yeah, when it works really well, that's great. And someone else bringing their creativity to a project is also wonderful. Authors are often in a room, on your own, and it can be
Mm.
really lonely. So to have someone to, birth this book together is a wonderful thing.
With that, Nathan, what is something that you would, share as in for new writers to come in to the space, them being young or, older writers? How do you discipline yourself to write
Yeah, the
in the first
discipline.
instance?
uh, It's interesting because that is the most important thing, and I think when I see a lot of writers fail, it's because they don't have that discipline.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't know how you teach that as well. I think sometimes authors will talk about finding those little moments in the day, whether especially if you've got kids and you're trying to balance,
Yes. Yeah.
parenting. That's one of the hardest
Yeah.
things to balance. So it might
Absolutely.
be if you're a morning person, it might be getting up that hour, whatever earlier and doing some of that writing, that quiet time. So sometimes do have to modify how you would normally do it. Like for me, the way I used to write was I would just take a whole week or 2 weeks off and kind of binge write, and I would just be in these worlds. I would ignore everything else, and I could really get a lot done. Whereas now, as a parent, I can't do that.
Yeah.
So it is finding these little moments but always having the end picture and goal, I guess, in mind so that you do deliver, you don't give up on it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And the other good thing about kids writing, especially, is the community is so supportive. There are so many amazing writing groups or just events where you go along, and sometimes it's that encouragement from other people. You always walk away from those events feeling really inspired, like, yes, I can do this, and there's a reason I'm doing this as well. So maybe there's something in there.
Well, the festival will obviously share a lot of actually there's quite a few different workshops happening that are free and budget budgeted for
Yes, yeah,
families.
yeah, exactly. So I think the workshops are $10 for a workshop, which is
That's
very cheap
great.
just to cover
Yep.
the cost of materials. We've got Free to Chew is doing a pop-up book workshop. We've got Andrew Cranner who he's a graphic novelist, but he's written a graphic novel that's also like a choose your own path type book. So
Yep.
he's gonna get kids to create something similar.
Yep.
And then we have Deb Fitzpatrick, who is a WA author. And
Yep.
every time I talk to people, when you go to festivals, you talk to people, say, who are the great, kids authors out there that are, on the circuit? And everyone always mentions Deb's name. They say she's fabulous and she
Wow.
delivers these really fantastic workshops. So yeah, she'll be coming over from Perth to do a writing workshop as well.
Fabulous. That sounds exciting. Well, the festival is on the 23rd of November.
Yep, Sunday 23rd.
And
And I should say, so there's all those things that I mentioned, but then there's
yeah,
also free activities, there's crafting spaces, and the libraries at the State Library of New South Wales, they have an Alison Lester exhibition at the moment, called Imagine. So there's a lot, to explore and do during the day.
yeah, yeah. Well, Nathan, I'll tell you what, thank you for sharing all of that with us at Hush Hush Biz today.
My
And
pleasure.
yeah, amazing, absolutely amazing, very insightful. And oh God, if I'm in Sydney, I'll come down and
Please do. Please
visit
do.
you. So all the best from us around, and thank you, and all have a great festival.
Thank you. Will do.
Thank you. Bye.